say welcome back, but you may be starting here, but we're actually now in session 2 of the Clean the House eSession with the E-Team, your resource and development network. And I'm excited to introduce Stephen Dobie. He is taking some time away. I appreciate you doing that to come and give us a little bit of information today. But Steve is actually with J.H. Batten. And Steve, tell us a little bit about J.H. Batten. What do you guys do? And kind of let us know what you're going to be talking about a little bit today.
Yeah, so J.H. Batten, we're a general contractor, design builder actually, to be more specific. We've been in business for 30 years, and we would design and build various type facilities, many different types of buildings and construction, but our heart and seems like our giftedness leans toward church design build, and we've done a lot of church design build projects over the years. We've been blessed to do that, and so it's just kind of a niche for us, and more than a niche, it's really our heart, and our heart is to help the church and church facilities.
So I've had the privilege of getting to know you guys a little bit more over the past several months, and you guys have a very unique process that you lead churches and staffs through, and it's not just churches. I've seen you guys do that in the marketplace leaders as well, but you guys have a really unique process of how you do that. Can you explain a little bit of what that process looks like, and like, I mean, what is design build? Because there's a lot of different definitions out there for it.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a big question, but it's a great question. You know, our approach is this, is simply, I don't really understand or know how I can help you till I really know who you are and what you're all about. And specifically for ministry, how do I help you as a church if I don't understand your DNA? And you're Jerusalem, you're trying to reach. Every church is different. Every church is called to something different in their community. And a building is just a tool of ministry. So our approach is to get to know the church and the ministry as good as possible, and then adapt the plan and the vision, make it a reality, while balancing the wants and the needs, because they usually don't match up budget-wise. And so juggling all that and delivering a tool of ministry that can support that church and that ministry for many years to come and reach many people. So that's a little bit about design build. We're the orchestra leader in effect. We build the team. We bring the designers to the table, bring the engineers, bring our giftedness to the table. Then the owner brings their vision. The church brings their vision, and then we all get around the table and map out the way to make a facility that will work and be used for ministry for many years to come.
Well, and there's a reason why I asked that specific question, is this. Because, I've got a chance to know you guys, see your team, see how you do, see how you interact with pastors and leaders and some of your clients. And I ask this because we find ourselves in this season, right? Mm-hmm. And every facility is different.
Sure. Every
facility is different. And there are different needs within our facilities as we're coming back in and as we're inviting people into our spaces. And I ask you that because I knew you would hit on it, just because I've heard you and talked to several people, and you always hit on that is very unique to the individual. It's about the person across that table or who you're looking at or that team you're working with.
Absolutely.
And so with that in mind, this is going to be a little bit outside, obviously, because we're speaking more to the masses today. But bring us into some of those individual conversations with some of your clients, some of your churches, when they have called you. Because I know you guys have kind of sat around a table with your team and you talked about some strategies and some plans and some solutions of how to take our existing facilities and turn them to more of a touchless environment. And so I want to ask the question like this. In this time, when someone comes to you, we're not talking about necessarily renovation right now, we're talking about new construction. When they come to you and you hear the word building and facility, I'm sure it shifts your mind and thinking a little bit, knowing this whole touchless environment and how to keep our facilities safe as you track down the road with some of your clients. What does that mean to you now? The word building, the word facility, and the process and structure in which you take people through. What does that mean to you, and what's some of the highlights?
Yeah, that's a good question. In a lot of ways, the newness of our season, the environment we're in now, in a lot of ways things are different, but in a lot of ways they're still the same, Andy. I used the word a minute ago. We view a building, a church building facility, as a tool of ministry. So it's just, how do we adapt that tool? Does that make sense? How do we adapt that tool to minister and be effective in the time we're in right now? And so this eSession is about where we're at in a season of coronavirus and all that. So how do we adapt? How do we make our tool more usable or more efficient or more safe to reach the folks that we're called to reach? So that's really your question, right? So the answer is, some things have changed, but in a lot of ways, a lot of things have not changed. We still do the same process. It's just we're looking at things a little differently now.
But except the allowances may have increased some or decreased with some certain items.
Right. Yeah.
So when you hear the word touchless environment, just kind of take us through a little bit. And I'm excited about session, I guess, 2A and B, if you will. We're going to actually be walking through a facility and pointing out some of these things. But for now, what are some of those things that could take either a new facility or existing facility that we can now turn into more of a touchless environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. What's interesting, 2 days ago, I was invited to a church in High Point, North Carolina, and they said, help us see what we can fix and make touchless. I was like, that's a good preparation for this eSession. And it was great to walk through with the pastor and one of his leaders. And so we put this into practice just a couple days ago. And so what I think about is your processes in your building. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Let's start right there. What can we do with those systems that can make our building touchless, or as touchless as possible? So when I think about entering a room, I think about lighting. And what do we always touch? We touch a light switch to throw the lights on. A lot of things changed back when the energy code took effect a few years ago that were beneficial for energy purposes, but also can be applied now in today's environment. And one of those is a motion a sensor for the lighting to come on. You think about there's a motion sensor on the wall when you walk in the door, and it senses detects your motion, and then the light comes on. That's wonderful. That can be used in most applications, but let's take it just a little further. In some rooms, there are multiple walls or partitions, and specifically a restroom. And sometimes it's important to look into maybe a ceiling mounted sensor. Without getting too far into it, what if you're in the restroom and it doesn't detect any movement? You don't want the lights to go out. So a ceiling mounted sensor is appropriate. We do that a lot for some corporate applications. Actually, we have a couple of corporate accounts we work with, and we install these a lot. And so what it allows, if it detects motion, it keeps the lights on or it turns them on, whichever needs to be. Now, the wall sensor is pretty easy to change out, very low cost. The ceiling mounted sensor is a little more expensive. So electrically, lighting is a big thing, and there's a lot of fingers and hands throwing switches on and off. So a motion sensor helps with that touchless environment, and then ultimately it actually saves money on energy too. So it's actually has a kind of a double benefit right now.
I'm not gonna lie, man. As a creative worship arts director for many years, the sensor, the motion scares me, because I can just imagine leading worship, the lights are down and things like that, and then somebody moves, and all of a sudden the whole atmosphere changes. We always joked all the time, the Holy Spirit moves when the keys start playing.
Yeah.
Well, one way to distract is when a light comes on. So I'm sure the technology's got a lot better with some of that, right?
And certain rooms are more suited for it than others. If you have a big worship room, a lighting board is usually going to be in effect or in play there. So, we would just come in a facility and just look at different rooms where it makes sense. And every application is a little different, so it'll be customized.
That's good. So what are some more? You hit on lighting. What are a couple more?
So another one, plumbing. Let's talk about plumbing. Most everyone is familiar with when you go to a commercial type facility, you go out to a store, a restaurant, you see a lot of, there's touchless toilets, and there's also touchless faucets. And those actually, you don't have to have that originally. They can be retrofitted. Let's talk about toilets a minute. You have one of two types when you enter any facility. You have either a flush valve type toilet or you have a tank type toilet. The flush valve is a more commercial type use, but it requires, it's in more urban areas where the water supply is greater and the pressures are greater, and you see those in a lot of your big box stores and most commercial applications. But a lot of some churches in rural areas, they might not have flush valve capability, that type of fixture. A flush valve can be retrofitted. If it's a handle that you pull down, we can take and change that unit out and create a sensor that it will flush when you move or you get up from what you're doing there. So that is a flush. I don't know how else to say it. I'm sorry. But and then you have the tank type toilets. Before, just a year or two ago, there really was no way to work with that. You had a handle. That was really it. There are some manufacturers now who offer a wave or a motion type tank type fixture. So depending on the manufacturer or the style or the model you have, you can, for very little money, you can retrofit a tank toilet, put a unit in it where you make it where it can be flushed by waving a sensor motion. If it's not compatible with the simple kit, you can change the whole fixture out for just a little bit more money. Still not very expensive. Change the whole toilet out and put those wave sensor type toilets in for those. That's fairly new technology. They work pretty well. So you have options either way. Before, tank type was pretty much you're done. That's all you can ever have. But now there's more options there. Moving to the faucets. Faucets are easily changed out. They usually have to be changed out in total, the whole unit. But motion sensor type faucets are very readily available and easily changed out. They're mixing valves and all that. And to be made where you wave or motion detects and the water comes on, you can wash your hands. So plumbing wise, a lot of good options there.
Assuming the paper dispenser products or equipment is fairly easy.
Yeah, paper dispenser, and you have your, I don't know if keeping air moving is probably not a good idea, but you have the motion detection paper towels. And so, yeah, there's a lot of good options.
What about the electronic or touchless soap dispensers? Are they fairly?
They work pretty well.
They're fairly easy to change in and out as well?
Very easy to change out. Very little money.
Yeah.
And then when I think about systems, the last one, mechanically or heating and air, you say, well, what can we do heating and air wise? Well, there is an option. Depending on the church you go to, I grew up in church all my life, and everyone wanted to go mess with a thermostat, right? You know, some people are too cold, some people are too hot, and they're always, well, you got to touch it. And even nowadays, there's touch screens, but you still touch them. There are thermostats that are made to be remotely controlled and to be touchless. That's a little more involved. It depends on the system you have, how big your facility is. If I could just dive in just for a brief moment. If your facility has systems that are simple and a simple heat pump that is split, okay, where one unit, one thermostat is working for one unit in one part of the building, and it's very simple. It's zoned, in other words. That thermostat can usually be changed out with a Nest type or an Ecobee type of system where the thermostat is controlled by software or your smartphone and even remotely on a PC. Those can be changed out and controlled remotely. And then probably you'd want to lock them down, put some kind of covering over it so people can't touch it or mess with it. That would be good. If your system, though, is a little more sophisticated, bigger facilities where you have, say, a thermostat, but you have remote sensors all throughout the building reporting back to that thermostat temperatures so it knows what units to cut on and off. If it's a little more sophisticated system like that, we can still do software to remotely control that heating and air equipment, but it's a little more expensive, it's a little more involved, but it can be done, and you can make it touchless as well. Yeah. So.
Anything else that you can think of? So what about some doors? When I think, again, I don't know. That's why we brought you to the table, the expert here. Our doors seem to be a little bit more expensive for the automatic openings than some of the other items.
Yeah, that's a great one too. So thinking about the systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, your question is what past that? Then it just comes down to in your mind walking through the building and what you touch, and you hit on the one that gets touched the most, and that's a door, door and door hardware, in and out, in and out, in and out, and door handles. I'm a little bit of a germaphobe myself, so I touch a door, especially now. I touch a door and then where's the hand sanitizer at? Where's Jordan? Jordan, give me that hand sanitizer.
The proper one, right?
Yeah. So, doors. Let's talk about doors a minute. So, a door is a pretty simple thing. Most doors in a commercial building, which a church is a commercial type facility, we can retrofit a door and then put a mechanical or an electric opener and closer. One that we've had success with recently, Stanley makes one. I think it's called the Magic Touch. It's very easy to use and very easy to go in on a door that does not have this and retrofit it to that door. Then you have your exterior doors, like your storefronts, your glass doors, and things like that. Sometimes the glass installer or the storefront contractor, he has his own set of equipment or openers and closers. The Stanley Magic Touch can actually be used on an exterior door as well. It just what are you trying to do is the question. If you have an exterior door, do we want to have a paddle that we push and the door opens? Are we trying to do maybe a swipe card, maybe for an administrative wing, for the office wing, maybe their access point? You walk into the building and say you go to the doors into the auditorium. Do you want a motion sensor where it senses motion and it opens, or do you want the paddle? It depends on how you want it actuated. That will determine the type of hardware we use. But we can walk through a facility and look at the doors and talk about the uses and determine the best prescription for those doors.
Because you probably don't want to recommend it for every door in the facility, because then it does get very expensive. But
very costly.
Having someone like yourself and your team come in and ask the why question, that's what I love. Yeah. What's the purpose? What's the ministry? What's the flow with this system? And determine which ones would be a good.
It's a great point. Which ones would work? And you alluded to, it being very costly to do all of them. And the door, you have the door closer itself, but you don't think about the whole process. You've got to get electricity to that door. So you've got to run a wire and get power, and then whatever actuator you want to use, that's a piece of it too. So you're right, it does add up in cost. So a selective group of doors is probably the smarter option.
So we hit on the doors, the restrooms. You had the language, I forgot. What did you call it? Mechanical?
The systems.
Yeah.
Mechanical systems.
What do you use in the contract world? I'm showing my ignorance here.
On the mechanical stuff?
What were you saying before? Like the
MEP.
There you go.
MEP.
Sorry.
Yeah. MEP.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
That's why I call
That's
you, man.
That's contractor language,
just connect
right?
you to them. There you go. So you talked about the doors, the MEP. What's some other things that just kind of jump out at you?
So then it comes down to, in my mind, one other big piece is surfaces. We have the session that Jordan led and worked with you on the sanitation, and that was really good. But how to clean surfaces, what surfaces need a certain type of cleaning. I think about floor covering. Carpet holds on to things a little more than hard surfaces.
Chairs,
pews, your walls. You go into a restroom, we're designing and putting a lot of tile walls, easily wiped down, easily cleaned. Your hard surfaces, your flooring. So a lot of times the church says, well, give me what's the most cost-effective flooring. And so we talk about a few things when it comes to that. They say, well, I like this vinyl tile. It's cheap. It looks good. It's cheap. It is. But you got to talk about the life of that product and what it's going to cost you to maintain that product. VCT is usually the lowest entry point in, but the most expensive to maintain, because you've got to strip it down, you got to wax it, you got to build it up. and then strip it down and wax it and build it up. It depends on the amount of traffic, and it can be very costly. It's easily sanitized. It's a hard surface, but we go to more products now, popular like a LVT product or a luxury vinyl tile or a luxury vinyl plank, LVP. They look really good. They really clean up well. They don't take any special waxes or stripping compounds or product. You can use most products like Jordan would recommend and sanitize it, mop it, and clean it, sweep it, mop it, and you're done. So a little more expensive than VCT, but easier to clean and a little more cost-effective to maintain. Of course, ceramic tile is awesome. Easy to clean. It's a hard surface, not porous, but it's usually very expensive going in, and it's just not right for every room. You wouldn't want a room full of, as a worship leader, you wouldn't want a room full of ceramic tile. I mean, sound would be going everywhere. So looking at the different areas, the different places, different rooms in a facility, and what surfaces need what applications. So floor covering is a big one, and then your walls. Walls, what are we painting them with? What we're using epoxy type paint, or we're using tile surfaces. We've done buildings before. We've put carpets on walls. Carpets tend to hold on to dirt and microbes a little bit more, but they can be clean too. But usually the cost of cleaning carpet is pretty good chunk of change as well. So working through all that is important.
And that's, again, what I love about y'all's process, because I've actually had the honor of sitting around some of those tables in these conversations. And the fact that you guys break even that stuff down when you're talking about budget and fitting within budget and big picture, because it's one thing you could put a product in,
right,
but it could be more costly down the road to maintain. And that's what I love. What I love most about your team is you guys see that big picture. You have the ministry talks, you have the why talks, and you bring it all around within your budget. And so that's good. And we got a glimpse of that because you just went and talked about those. And
I hope it wasn't too much detail, but those are the type of things we work through. And you think about, if I'm sitting down with you as a pastor, and we're going to talk, we have our first meeting together, and I'm just trying to take as much information in. I'm trying to get to know you and tell me about your church. Tell me about what you're trying to do in the kingdom. And so I might need you to answer 20 questions for me. But as we get to know each other, there's going to be 200 questions, and so we always say we better enjoy working together. We better enjoy each other. We're going to spend some time together. And so every project needs to be looked at that way. It's about a relationship for us, and we want to absolutely deliver the right tool of ministry. I can't tell you how many facilities I've been in, and what you call a multi-use space, by whatever reason, design or the way the tool was fitted out or made, it was made a multi-useless facility. And I've been in dozens. And so it's important early on, we're talking about new facilities, it's important early on to design these things into it. But if you're in a building and you've been in it for 10, 20 years, don't lose hope. There are ways to come in and retrofit and make things old new again with the season we're in, and make them touchless, make them more, people feel safer coming into. The church I was in 2 days ago, one of the buildings is 100 years old, Andy. 100 years old. And they said, what can we do to make our people feel safer and more sanitary? And we talked about the restrooms, we talked about their doors, we talked about these same things. And they're like, if we can do those things, that speaks into our people. We care about them and whoever's going to be our guest, and that's really what it's all about. This pandemic, who knows when it's going to end or when it really begun? I don't know. Do you know when it begun? I don't know.
I don't know.
Or when it's going to end. But it's about ministering in the season we're in. Things will probably never be the same, go back to the way they were. I don't have a crystal ball. I wouldn't use one if I had one. We need to be on our knees to Him, finding out His plan for us and our ministries moving forward. And so that's what we want to come alongside and do with churches, help them fit their tool for their ministry.
That's so good. And so, man, we can't thank you enough, you and Jordan both, for taking time today just to spend with us. And I'm excited about the next session that we're going to do. We're going to actually walk through, because there's some things that you didn't necessarily hit that we're going to touch on as we walk through, because we're just going to see them, and it's going to jump out. I just think about this stage, this beautiful stage. We're in an unbelievable, beautiful facility. It's Clover Hill Church, right outside of Richmond. And they're gracious enough to let us use this facility today. And I'm excited about walking through here because as far as the AVL side in this stage, there's many people that's on here. We're gonna look at some of that and talk through some of that.
What a huge piece we didn't even talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Steve, thank you so much. Thank you and the team back at J.H. Batten for taking time and doing this. And
Our
so,
pleasure.
hey, hope you guys enjoyed this session. We look forward to seeing you for the third session coming up soon on Clean the House.